Good morning, everybody. My name is Bob Listenby. I'm one of DA Krasner's first assistants. I'm here today to provide the GAO weekly community press conference to update folks on what's been going on, particularly regarding gun violence in our city. We'll be providing a weekly gun crimes update, stressing our commitment to holding shooters accountable and ensuring that drivers of gun violence face appropriate consequences here in the city and county of Philadelphia. Today we're going to highlight the District Attorney's Office's homicide and non-fatal shootings unit and staff. We'll be providing some prosecutorial updates on one case assigned to our homicide and non-fatal shootings unit. I'd like to acknowledge community stakeholders, staff, and media. First, Chesley Lightsey, who is the supervisor of our homicide and non-fatal shootings unit, and Clark Beljean, who's also with me today, who is Assistant District Attorney in the District Attorney's Office Special Investigations Unit. Let me provide first the gun crimes update. From September 25th, 2021 through October 1st, 2021, there have been, to date, 418 homicides. At this date last year, there were 354. This marks an increase of 18%. There were 12 homicides during the same period from September 25th to October 1st, and 31 non-fatal shootings. There were 193 gun or gun violence incidents, 79 arrests made by law enforcement, and 71 cases opened and charged by the District Attorney's Office. As you know, we've maintained a very strong position on the importance of ending cash bail. The median bail set for illegal possession of guns during this period was $75,000, and median bail set for violent offenses with guns was $75,000. Our goal is to encourage the development of a cash bail system so that people who are engaged in gun violence can be held, not released back to the streets or to their communities, and people who deserve to be released, not those with guns and who are out here shooting up the neighborhoods, will be able to be released. This system exists in other places, most notably Washington, D.C., and has existed for a while, and we strongly support this idea so that we do not end up with shooters back on the streets. There was an active shooter incident on October 1st, last Friday at approximately 11:30 a.m. on the 5200 block of Old York Road. A black male, approximately 25 years old, a security guard at that location, was shot one time in the head. Shortly thereafter, he was pronounced on the scene. An apprehension has been made by the Philadelphia Police Department, and a weapon has been recovered. Assistant District Attorney Chesley Lightsey is present and available to respond to questions regarding this incident at the end of today's press conference. On Sunday, October 3rd, at approximately 11 p.m. on the 700 block of Huntington Park Avenue, there was a triple shooting. This is in the 25th Police District. There was one victim, a black male, approximately 41 years old, was shot twice in the face. He was transported to Temple Hospital and placed in critical condition. There was a second victim, a female, approximately 27 years old, was shot one time in the leg. She was transported to the Cooper Hospital in Camden, New Jersey. However, her condition is unknown at this time. A third victim, a Hispanic male, approximately 31 years old, was shot once in the left hand. He was transported to Temple Hospital and placed in stable condition. Thus far, no arrests have been made by the Philadelphia Police Department at this time. This remains an open investigation. If there is anyone out there who has information about this incident, you should contact the Philadelphia Police Department's East Detective Division unit. The number there is 215-686-3224. And again, we give these numbers because sometimes there are folks out there who know something about these incidents, and we'd like them to call in and help us find these folks who are out here shooting up our neighborhoods. This morning, there was another active shooter incident and a homicide. There was an active shooter incident shortly after midnight in Center City and then in West Philadelphia. Assistant District Attorney Clark Beljean and Assistant District Attorney Chesley Lightsey will be available to respond to questions from the media at the end of this press conference about that incident. Our hearts and our thoughts are with the person who was killed and also with the officers who were injured in this incident, and to all law enforcement partners who risk their lives on a daily basis to address incidents like this. Additionally, our hearts and prayers are with the co-victims in the community who are impacted by the homicide, by the murder of this civilian. As I indicated, at 11:59 last night, the Philadelphia has reached its 418th homicide. No child, no young adult, no senior citizen, and no resident of our city should feel unsafe or live in fear in their own neighborhoods. We have and will continue to hold shooters accountable in this city. There will be consequences. I want to stress this. There will be consequences for those people who are arrested, charged, and prosecuted for shootings here in the city and county of Philadelphia. We will hold these folks accountable, and we will hold them accountable in a very serious way. So my message to anyone who should decide to pick up a gun is be aware that law enforcement will find you, arrest you, and we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. We are better than this as a community, we're better than this as a city, we're better than this as a society, and we've got to show that. All throughout this city, I hear from folks who are telling me over and over again that they're concerned about their safety anywhere in the city, and we've got to stop this, and we've got to stop it now. I want to emphasize one other thing. We have our CARES team. They've responded to 11 families, providing advocacy, crisis support, and referral services as needed. Our CARES team, is out there responding to these problems all over the city all the time. It doesn't matter what time day or night these incidents occur. Our CARES team tries to get to the families as soon as possible and work to support them for the first 45 days that they're dealing with these problems. I want to, at this point, stress one other thing. We have a very strong homicide non-fatal shootings unit. You'll hear from the supervisor of that unit. They have been actively prosecuting cases here in the city of county of Philadelphia since the courts opened up last year in September. They started with preliminary hearings, and now they're actively prosecuting the homicide cases and the non-fatal shootings that are coming our way. They're doing an outstanding job, and I just want to note that. At this point in time, I'd like to provide an opportunity for the supervisor of that unit to step forward and address any questions that you might have about the activities that she is aware of and focuses on. Chesley?
And before I take questions, I just want to highlight one case. I think it was in the release that was sent out. Two assistant district attorneys in my unit cannot be here, and they're really the ones that should deserve credit for this huge success in court. I want to highlight Ashley Teslowski as well as Rebecca Lederer. They are both assistant district attorneys in the homicide portion of the homicide and non-fatal shooting unit. They are both responsible for a conviction that the office got last week. Specifically, Ms. Lederer tried the case to a jury. The defendant's name was Michael Drennan. That's D-R-E-N-N-O-N. Mr. Drennan, in December of 2018, I want to make sure I'm giving you the right years, because there's actually two different cases that bring us here. So on December 29th of 2018, Michael Drennan murdered his girlfriend and his girlfriend's mother in his home, the home he shared with them. The mother was 66 years old and in a wheelchair at the time. Both victims were shot one time in the head. Mr. Drennan then called police, reported a home invasion, and tried to sort of suggest that an ex-boyfriend of the 42-year-old victim was responsible. Unknown at that moment to police is the boyfriend that Mr. Drennan was suggesting was, in fact, a murderer. Mr. Drennan had shot that man in the face 2 years prior on December 26th of 2016. Excellent work by assigned homicide detective Pearson. Sort of knocked down the idea that this other victim, who was actually a shooting victim himself, could have done it. Detectives went out, they got video of that person at work, got his time cards, and shut down every avenue of a potential defense for Michael Drennan. Last week, a Philadelphia jury convicted Mr. Drennan of 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder as it related to that 2016 shooting. Mr. Drennan was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. This is just one sort of snippet of the work that our unit is doing every day in the courthouse. There are folks over there picking juries right now, handling waiver trials, putting up preliminary hearings. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that good work, as well as the hard work of the detectives of the Philadelphia Police Department, who not only brought this case in to be charged, but worked directly with both of our attorneys all through the trial to make sure they had everything they need to get this conviction. So I, at this time, can take questions on that or any of the other cases that were mentioned before. Yes, ma'am.
Two things. One, do you have any motivation for the Logan shooting?
We don't have any motivation as it relates between the defendant and the victim. I know that there's some connection that I cannot get into now, but there's no relationship, as I understand it, between the person who was murdered and the shooter himself. That seems to be just, he shot the person that he, kind of encountered.
The second goes to the shooting that happened this morning, last night, overnight.
Jefferson Hospital.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is that it appears from preliminary investigation, and we have not charged this case yet, so I want to be clear, the suspect in both the shooting that they engaged later with the officers of the 16th Police District, as well as the suspect in the murder that happened at Jefferson Hospital, we believe are the same individual. It is pretty clear from early investigation as it relates to the murder in Jefferson Hospital. Yes, it is pretty clear as it relates to the murder that happened of a 42-year-old completely innocent victim in Jefferson Hospital, that the two people knew each other, and early indications is that they were actually friends. So we don't know what the motivation was that caused our suspect to go in and murder this person. But he was clearly, based on everything I know, was targeting this individual.
Are you expecting also charges to maybe come out today?
I would say in the next couple of days. The suspect is currently in custody, but in the hospital as it relates to the shooting of two Philadelphia police officers. But yes, I've been in constant contact with the detective in that case, John Harkins, and I expect that they'll bring charges to me to approve in the next, if not today, by tomorrow.
I have a question about the Logan shooting and then something else that happened over the weekend. On the Logan shooting, it's my understanding that the suspect who was arrested had previous charges of threats. Were the threats, and I'm told that those threats were toward one of the tenants in that building, staff of one of the tenants in that building, did he appear to be targeting those same people again? And had there been anything in the interim to protect them?
Okay. So what I can tell you is that the suspect / the defendant in that murder had a charge of terroristic threats. I think it was actually 2 charges of terroristic threats for what I will call a very long letter, or a manifesto, if you will, that had been written with threats previously. That was specifically directed at an individual who does not work at this location. So I just want to be clear about that, but who was potentially receiving services through this location, okay? The bail had been given in that case because it was a terroristic threats case that had no violence, and this I'm not sure about the exact date, but that was at least a year prior to this shooting. It may have been a little longer. Okay, so a couple of years. Thank you. We don't know if the motivation was to go there for the same reason. I mean, it's hard to know what anyone's actual motivation is in committing murder. So do we suspect that it's related somehow? Yes. Can I tell you right now as I'm talking to you that it absolutely is? I cannot. And I know you had a question.
Oh, I have one more about something.
Oh, okay. I'll go to you and then
I
I'll...
just didn't quite hear you. You said you were expecting charges possibly today on the Jefferson case, today or
tomorrow. So the detectives are still out running down leads and interviewing witnesses, and so when they are ready to bring it to me, they will. I suspect that will be either today or sometime tomorrow, just based on, they want to make sure they've done everything they need to do before bringing the case.
My other question was about, I have to write out here the incidents that we saw with cars and the donuts and people getting on top of police cars, drifting, I guess they call it. Are there any charges coming in connection to that? And in general, what is the District Attorney's Office's response to what we saw right out here?
I'm going to pass this off to Mr. Listenby.
So far, to the best of my knowledge, there have been no charges that have come to our office. We understand that there were a number of police officers present at the time. Many of us have seen the videos on the news, and as soon as they bring charges, we will follow up on them immediately. I personally believe that the kind of behavior that we saw is an indication of a kind of a lawless streak going on here in the city and county of Philadelphia. It needs to stop. That kind of behavior is just not acceptable right here in Center City in front of City Hall. Just not acceptable. Nor is it acceptable in the communities where it's occurring as well. Young people need to find other outlets for their energies besides blocking traffic and behaving in what I consider to be some reckless manners.
Did it appear to you from what you've seen in those videos that laws were broken?
I'm not going to comment upon that just yet. I'm going to be in communication with representatives from the police department about it. I have been on calls with community people regarding dirt bikes and ATVs. I've been on several calls with many people from throughout the city. I think at one point in time there were at least 12 or 1,300 people on the call that I was on. So I've been following it closely and will continue to follow it. But until police charge folks, or until rather they bring folks to us that they've arrested, we can't charge them. So I'll be keeping my eyes open and follow it closely.
Just to follow up on that, you said there's a streak of lawlessness. I'm sure you're aware there's a debate in the city over why that might be, and some people put some of the blame on the district attorney's office. Some people have said that people don't expect to be caught.
You know, that same kind of comment was made during the Zoom calls that I was on with 1,300 folks. But what was clear was that the city council was in the process of changing the laws so that police could charge folks for the specific behavior that was in question. Many of the behaviors are traffic violations. That's not something that we normally are involved in, except in our traffic court people who staff that. So when the laws are changed or when the police officers bring charges, there are some very specific charges that they can bring now. We've gone over those with the community and also with law enforcement. Those charges, when they arrest folks on those charges, we will follow up on it. I made it clear then on my communications on the Zoom calls. I'm making it clear now. We will follow up on them. I also want to emphasize something else. Our community needs to find outlets for young people who want to involve themselves with dirt bikes and ATVs, someplace that's lawful and that taps into their energies so that they can enjoy themselves and not break the laws, or as importantly, disturb folks. The idea is that people driving down the sidewalks on ATVs or on dirt bikes is just not acceptable. So those kinds of things are not acceptable. We encourage lawmakers and others to engage in behaviors that will help these young people find outlets for their energy. But until then, we will do whatever is necessary to prosecute them once they are arrested.
Just to be clear,
Yes.
too, there was, it wasn't just ATVs and dirt bikes and roofs. I guess you're saying that separately. It was actually cars that were doing donuts.
Yes.
And then there was also some people that were jumping on the police cars, and it looks like there were like maybe two. I mean, I saw two police cars. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're marked. For what kind of charges would they for jumping on a police car and being in that kind of setting? I don't know. I'm just asking what kinds of charges that would look like.
Well, typically the kind of charges that can be brought are disorderly conduct, certainly, and recklessly endangering another person if they're driving their cars around in circles, and also traffic violations that go along with those.
So nothing jumping on the car, nothing like jumping on a police car.
I have to wait to see what happened. I mean, just jumping on the cars by itself, there's a lot more going on there. I'd have to wait and find out from the police officers what they saw, what happened that precipitated those events, and then what they did what happened after those events occurred. But if they inform us of charges, they arrest folks, we will follow through on it. That I can assure you.
One quick follow-up on the Logan thing that you were talking about. One of the charges, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the current charges for the suspect in that. That same charge from 2019 is appearing for this one, the terroristic threats. Was that related to something that happened on scene on Friday that he said, or was there something, did he send a letter or make a phone call or something like that ahead of time that led to that particular charge?
So I do not have an answer for you. I was not personally the charger in that instance. I can get an answer for you. If you can send me an email, I'll be happy to get an answer for you. I suspect, I'm not aware of any writing that's more recent, but just send me an email and I'll get an answer. Yep. All right, I think that concludes our day.
Thank you.
Just, Clark Beljean is present here. Clark was present at the active shooter incident this morning. He does not have a lot to add because the investigation is ongoing, but if he wants to step up for a moment, he may have questions that he can answer. Clark?
Good morning. Does anybody have questions for this morning? Very early. I was not at the scene at the hospital. I went to the scene in the park. The 4 officers who had discharged had already left that area, but I am working closely with the officer-involved shooting investigation unit with PPD, who is working closely with PPD's homicide unit. So if there's any questions.
Can you talk about maybe the number of rounds that you saw out there, or an estimate?
I cannot give you an estimate. The defendant did have an AR-style long gun. There were several. The crime scene unit was still marking all of them, to be honest, in the hour that I was there. I saw several of our officers' casings, but many bullets were fired.
And did he have I'm not super familiar with an AR, just generally what it looks like. Well, I know what it looks like, but how much it carries. But did he have a lot of ammunition, or is there anything like that you can talk about?
That I don't know just yet.
Do you know if he had the long gun in the hospital, or was that just found in West Philly?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
Is there anything to say about the officers in terms of their names, or how long they've been, with the force, or ages, or any details on them?
No, I can't give you any details on the officers. This is a very early and ongoing investigation. There were 4 officers who discharged. 2 of them were injured. I don't believe that any of it's life-threatening, but that's all the information I have for you. Thank you.
Say and spell your name for us.
Yes, Clark Beljean. My first name is Clark, C-L-A-R-K-E. Last name is Beljean, B-E-L-J-E-A-N.
And your title?
Assistant District Attorney.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? If not, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That's very, very kind. I have to take a photo.